Okay, everybody. So, welcome back. Today I'm going to be covering a couple questions that people had about the making text um, in Maya, the making a glass material, and also normal mapping, um, making brushes and stuff in Substance Painter and Photoshop. So, we're going to take a look at all of that today. Um, Hopefully this will not be an extremely long video, but I'm going to try to keep things pretty concise. But anyway, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start with the text tool. So I'm just going to make a nice plane here. And to make things nice and easy, okay, I'm modeling in inches, so I'm just going to make this a 200 by 200 just for sake of, keeping it even. Um, and then I'm going to go up here to my absolute transform and center this. There we go. Now that's centered up. All right. So, text. Oh, actually, I do want to do one more thing to set up my scene. I'm going to go to Arnold. I'm just going to pop in a sky dome. And what that's going to do is just give me some basic lighting. Okay. Right now, we don't have anything in the scene, so it doesn't really look like a whole lot, but it will here in a minute. Um, Now, you could plug an HDRI into here, which, um, like we had talked about before, you can go to www.hdrihaven, and choose an HDRI, and then you just plug it in to your um, color, and we're gonna go in here, and I already have an HDRI right here, and I could just plug that in, and now my lighting will be based on that um, HDRI, which is fine with me. So um, actually, it'll look really nice with the glass too. So all right. So as far as text goes, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn off my grid because that's just kind of distracting right now. And then up here, this big orange T, that's your text tool. Now, it's just going to pop generic type in there, and it's going to say 3D type. So if I render this now, we've just got, the 3D letters, and they're kind of boring. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this a little more interesting. So what you have to do is go in here, and there's all these tabs, okay? So the most important thing is right here what font you're using, just like in Microsoft Word or Photoshop or whatever else. So I have a whole mess of fonts that you probably do not have, and that's okay. Just pick something um, that looks good, okay? Um, and then go from there. So let's see. I am going to go all the way up here. And one thing you can do is you can highlight that and use your down arrow to scroll through the different typefaces until you find one that you like. Okay, so highlight this and then use your down arrow and you can scroll through until you find one that you like. Okay, so let's see. I am going to go with something. I want something bold that we can work with. So, yes, I have a lot of fonts. Let's go with, well, I can't find it, but I can highlight this and type in the font that I'm looking for, and it will go to it. So I'm going to go with Worlds at War, which you won't have, but that's okay. Just pick one you like. All right. Now you can, some fonts have a regular bold italic, so you can switch that. This is also, switching it to a different language, which you don't want to do. So now, in this area is where you type in what you want. So I'm actually going to, well, let's use the Lincoln. That's fine. All right. So here's 3D text. Okay. Now, you can adjust your size. Okay. So this is in inches. So I'm going to have 12-inch letters. And then your tracking, which will separate or squeeze together the letters. Okay. So I'm just going to leave that alone. Kerning also will space out your letters. Okay. So for the most part, I would leave these settings alone. But that is up to you. Play with them, see what you like, and go from there. All right. So if we step through these tabs, most of them are nothing you really need to worry about. Okay. Keep going until you get to type extrude. Okay. Now, type extrude. If you look on your letters, there's divisions here. So reduce the amount of polygons that you're using. You don't need a whole bunch of divisions right there, unless you want them. But for the most part, don't worry about it. Now, here is where you can adjust your extrude depth. Okay. Now, the slider will only go up to 10. Okay. But you can enter other numbers. Okay. So if I want that to be 120 inches, I can do that. Okay. Which I do not. So I'm just going to enter a value of 6. So they're kind of chunky, but not too bad. Okay. Don't worry about extrude offset. Okay. Now you can play with the extrude curve if you choose, but I'm actually just going to flatten that back out. And you can add a bevel. Not sure why it's not adding the bevel here. Well, it is not wanting to do the bevel for some reason, and I do not know why. But that's okay because we can do that after the fact. So I am not going to worry about that for right now. But the main one that you want to deal with is this type extrude, okay, which is right there, and type 1, okay. So once you have those and you have your letters where you want them, okay, now you can go in here, go edit, delete all by type, history, and that's going to make your life much easier because it's going to reduce this down to only those 3 tabs. Now you can treat this just like any other polygon object. So say I wanted to add a bevel to these, okay? I can hit Control E and I can extrude those out. And then offset and add a little bit of a bevel to it, okay? So, and you can even do more than that. You just have to be very careful of points like right here where it gets really thin. If you go too far, then you're going to crush in on the mesh, and then it's going to look really, really bad. So you can do really nifty little things like this. Okay. So now I have some fairly interesting text. Okay. So now if I go in here and render this, now I've got some fairly decent text to play with, okay? Now, I am not going to actually unwrap this properly because I'm just going to throw a glass material on it and it doesn't really matter. So this actually looks halfway decent. And if we look at the unwrap over here, it's fairly decent. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up just a little though. So I'm going to go ahead, do that, do a camera based, then do an automatic, and lay it out. And I know I've said multiple times, never use automatic, but sometimes you do what you do. And hopefully Maya does not crash. Ha 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 ha. We'll see. Well, it may have just crashed. We'll give it a minute. Let's see what happens. Okay, so Maya has apparently crashed. So this is what we're going to do. We are just going to go ahead and end Maya. And then I will restart Maya here. And we'll speed through creating that scene again very quickly. And this is all being done in real time with no edits, obviously. So I am available on the Discord if anybody has any questions, which you won't be watching this until later, but I am there. Alrighty. Come on, Maya. There we go. Alright. So now we're back. So, alright. I am going to very quickly do this again with pretty much no explanation this time. So hopefully everybody is enjoying some time off, getting some games in, or something. While I'm doing this, I'm basically just going to kind of ramble on. So you can feel free to turn off your sound until you see that I've caught back up, or you can just kind of hang out with me and see what happens. And in fact, I can even skip some of the steps here, but I'll go ahead and do it the right way. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do my extrude depth after I've just made this a regular poly object, because what I can do is just grab the front faces of these just like um, a normal poly object at this point. And I'm just going to do that, and then I'm going to do a extrude. So I'm going to do a little bit of an offset, pop that out a little bit, and then select these faces again, Control E, do a tiny little offset, Control E, and push those back. All right. So now I'm back to where I was, except for the sky dome, which so now that's back. So now everything is back where it's supposed to be. So now I'm just going to go ahead and save this guy. Alright, so now that we're caught back up, and you saw how quick that can be done, so lettering is not complicated. Just use the text tool. So anyway, so now we are at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then we're going to go into the UV editor. Engine layout. Well, it looks like Maya wanted to crash again. So that's fun. Apparently, it is not enjoying doing lettering. So, we're just going to open up Maya again. And that's why I saved the scene. So, alright, we'll bring Maya back down here. There we go. Alright, there we go. Alright. Now, let's try the UV editor one more time. Bring it down here. Because I still don't like the stretching across there, so I'm just going to grab all these UV shells, create a camera base, create an automatic. There we go. Good enough. All right. So now that we're there, all right, I am going to place this down on the ground here. And now we're going to do the glass. So here's my lettering. Go to hypershade. I'm going to go Arnold shader, AI standard surface. We'll just name this glass. You're going to turn your base color weight down and turn it to black. Metalness 0. Specular. Now, under specular roughness, if you look at it, nice and super shiny or kind of frosty. So if you want frosted glass, turn up the roughness. If you want super shiny glass, go with the 0 value on your roughness. Now, this is where the magic happens. Under transmission, turn up the weight. Boom. Now you got glass. Okay? Now, you might have to adjust the depth depending on your object. Okay? That's going to be a case-by-case thing. You can add extra roughness to your glass if you want, but I would adjust the roughness in your specular roughness just to be sure. If you want a colored glass, you're going to do it under transmission color. Okay, right here. So let's make that a nice red glass. Why not? And then under advanced, make sure internal reflections is on. Sometimes you want caustics, sometimes you won't. Caustics is kind of like when you use a magnifying glass to burn ants. That extra high focus diffusion of light. Okay, looks really pretty, but it will increase your render time. So you may or may not want that. But that's really all you have to do to create a glass. Now, just like any other material, if I want to have a specific roughness, like say I want scratches or dirt or whatever, I can add that into my roughness channel. Okay, so say I made some dust and dirt and cracks or whatever that go in the roughness. I can add that in to the roughness channel, and it will make it look like, you know, shiny in one part and not shiny in the other part. That's what roughness does. You can also, under the geometry tab, you can still go in here and use normal mapping. Okay, so just like applying a normal map to any other material, you can do it under the geometry tab, just like any other material. But for now, here's our glass. So I'm just going to grab that, and I'm going to assign existing material and glass, and then we're going to render it. And of course, my render is showing up on the opposite monitor. There we go. All right. So there is a view of our glass material. Okay. Now I don't have enough light in this scene, obviously, and it's giving me some fireflies over here in my render, but that would be something to discuss in another video. Um, but you will get the colored color shadows. So um, and you can play with this glass material on a number of different surfaces. You can apply it to planes and cubes and all sorts of stuff. So um, you may have to adjust your depth values, like I said, depending on what the surface is. Okay, and here's another little render. Okay, now another thing you want to make sure your objects that you have selected to have glass on. Make sure that under the Arnold tab, this little opaque flag, click that off because the objects are not opaque. They are uh, see-through, translucent, transparent, whatever. So it will make a little bit of a difference in how your glass looks. Okay, so I'm going to rotate this guy. So you can see it's got nice refraction and reflection going on. So yeah, so that's basically glass. Um, and then normal mapping, we're just going to use this cube because it's readily available. All right, so here I've got my cube, and what I'm going to do is make sure that this is unwrapped properly. So we're going to go UV shell. We'll just go unfold, layout. All right, so that's good. I'm going to assign just a standard AI standard surface to it. So it's just gray now. So there's that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this box and go to export selection. I'm just going to export this out as cube 01. Make it an FBX. There we go. And then I am going to switch over to Substance Painter. Make that 4096. And yep. And we're good. All right. So in Substance Painter, here we have the unwrapped cube. You know, So I am going to take that off. You always want to bake your mesh maps first. So I'm going to make this 4096. We're going to use low poly as the high poly because it's literally all we have. And just go ahead and bake those. Alright, so now that that's done, now I can go in here and I'm just going to throw a basic brass on here just so you can see what's going on. Alright, now I can add a standard layer, okay? And on that standard layer, I can paint color, right? I can paint height. I can change the roughness. And I can also paint metallic. So anything that I choose to paint in there, okay? You can also paint normal map information. So if I add a layer in here, and let's say I turn off the color and the roughness and the metallic. Now, anything I paint in the height channel will get exported out with the normal map anyway. Anything that I put in the normal map channel will also go in the normal map, okay? So let's say I want to use height information, okay? So what I can do is I can either go in here and say it's either going to be high, low, or no change, right? So that would be literally just on the surface. It's not doing anything. If I do this, I'm going to dig into the surface. And if I bring it up here, I'm going to push out of the surface, okay? So you can add details like that. Now, a cool thing is you can adjust this to say you want to stamp something into it, right? Well, here under the brush alpha, I can take that alpha off, go in here to my alphas, and maybe I want to add a vent of some sort, okay? So now I have this vent, and I can increase the size of it. Now, maybe it doesn't go all the way to the size that I want it. So I can switch this size space to texture, and now it is much, much larger. So now I can really get it where I want it, and I can paint it in the 3D view or in the 2D view, it doesn't really matter. And I can stamp that in there. So now I've got this cool grate going on, right? Or I can go in here and I can stamp it down in the 2D view and get the same result, okay? And you can use that for sculptural details on buildings. You can use it for grates and vents and panels and all sorts of fun stuff. Okay, now I can also take the height out and paint in the normal map. Now, right now I don't have any normal map um, information. It's not going to do anything. Okay, so the alpha has no control over the normal map. What we need there is under hard surfaces. Where did they all go? Hopefully Substance Painter did not die on me here. Okay, well, here's the hard surfaces, okay? So, these are normal maps, all right? So now I can take something like this, say, and I can drop it into the normal map uh, channel over here. And if I stamp that down, now I get those details, okay? So either way you choose to do it, you can do that. So what if you want to make your own little panel details, right? That you can stamp anywhere on your object. Well, you can do that in Photoshop. So you're going to make a 4096 by 4096 um, image. So 4096 by 4096. Okay. 4K. That's the best way to do it. All right. So now let's say I want some panel lines or something. Okay. So I'm actually just going to go here in Photoshop and I want to draw in black and white. So I am going to, let's see, I'm just going to add a dot there, maybe one there, something there. Okay. And then we'll do some panel lines. So I'm going to use shift to trying to adjust my pin here. I want it to just give me a dead brush without any pressure sensitivity. Well, in this case, I guess what I'm going to have to do is do this. So I'm going to use my lasso tool, and I'm just going to edit stroke 25 pixels, center, boom. There we go. All right. And then let's just add some other So you're just going to draw your shapes in black and white. And then let's say I want to add some little hinges or something. I'm not being exactly precise with this, but and you can always add more layers if you want to. Say you want to add some little vents or something, so we can so you can do something like that, and then just flatten the image, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to go up here to Filter, 3D, Generate Normal Map. And if you look here, you can see that you've got your little normal mapped details in there, and you can adjust the the sliders so it's either, a little more detailed or a little more fuzzy. So if I bring that up, you can see it gets kind of fuzzy. If I bring that down, you're going to get a nice sharp detail. You can invert it depending on how you want to do it. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And then now I can take this and I can save as, I'm just going to save it on my desktop as norm test 1 PSD. Save it. Go back in here. And then this little import resource icon, I can add resource from my desktop. There it is. And I am going to import it as a texture. Import it to this project. Import. And here it is right down here. So now if I drop this into the normal map slot, now I can stamp that anywhere I want. Now that looks like it's actually reversed from what I want it. So what I can do is leave that, go back to Photoshop, Control Z that, go to Filter, 3D, Generate Normal Map, untick Invert Height, hit OK. Then I'm going to save it again as the same thing. Go back to Substance, right-click, hit Reload, and then drag it back over to this normal map channel. And now those details are going in like I wanted them to. Okay, so that's how you make a normal map that you can stamp pretty much anywhere on your object. Okay, now the same exact process is what you can use if you want to make an alpha, which you can use for height maps. So we're just going to go back to Photoshop. I'm going to hit Control Z. Now I can take this and I can go Image and Adjust and Invert. Okay. And now I'm going to take this and I'm going to save as alpha test. And file, add alpha test. Import it as an alpha and not a texture. Bring it into your project. And now here it is in the alpha channel. So if I actually grab this, bring it over to my alpha for my brush, now you can see it's right here. Now I'm going to turn off the normal channel, turn on the height channel, and I'm going to tell it if I want it to go up or down. So I want it to stamp that detail in to the mesh. So we're going to just do this, and then I'm going to go like that. And now it's going and stamping any of the white in. And if I reverse that to this, now it's popping those details out from the surface. So in some ways, making an alpha instead of a normal map um, is more beneficial. Okay, so for like sculptural details, like a building or whatever, um, you might want to make them alphas in Photoshop and then bring them in to Substance Painter and use them this way. So you can stamp them down wherever you want. And if it's too deep, the cool thing, a normal map will it's just whatever depth it is. Okay? Where this um, doing this as a alpha, I can have it going super deep there, just barely above the surface there, barely even making a scratch there, have it deep there, so you can see right here, you can get multiple different looks all from one alpha, depending on how deep you want to go with it or how you adjust that slider. So anyway, that is glass and the text tool and normal maps and yeah, I think that's I think that's pretty much it for today, and we'll see you next time.